This video is meant as an addendum to my original video on Simulacra, which was a brief introduction to the ideas of Jean Baudrillard that honestly had some problems. Baudrillard. Sorry again. The original video came off at times a bit more politically motivated than I intended, and that gave some people the idea that Simulacra is a political experience, one that only those on one end of the political spectrum are vulnerable to. But it's not. We are all living in a world of simulations. This has been a weakness of my scripts for many years. It's hard for me to stay on topic without veering into my own little mental tide pools. So I want to build out more from that video because simulation theory really is fascinating, and I don't want some people to ignore it because my examples triggered them emotionally. So let's try this again. Simulacra. Imagine you are a primitive human, straight up cave people, and you have no symbols to communicate to the others in your group. Well, that's very inconvenient. So at some point in our development as a species, we developed signs. Buffalo, two, buffalo, water, fire, arrow. These signs are considered first order or step one of Simulacra. It's a symbol that accurately expresses what you mean. At this stage, the sign is a faithful copy. When someone draws a buffalo, it's understood that you mean an actual buffalo. It doesn't carry irony or metaphor or any extra cultural meaning. As I said in my first video, pumpkin is pumpkin. Later in history, we find the next step in the portrait of a king. The portrait is an image that depicts the king, yes, but it's also got a lot of other cultural meaning. The painter isn't going to paint the king the way he looks first thing in the morning. They're going to paint the king in a way that expresses how noble he is, or powerful, or wealthy, or pious. And probably a little bit more handsome than he was, too. I mean, you don't want to get your head cut off because some royal guy has an unsightly goiter or something, so you just airbrush it out. This image is still tied to reality. It is a portrait of the king, but it's been reformed. It's an idealized version of the real man. The image of the king as a noble authority figure is more important than showing him accurately. This is second order, or step two of Simulacra, the masking or perverting of reality. Moving along in human history, we can find the next step of Simulacra in Paris, Las Vegas. This is a French-themed resort, including a half-scale replica of the Eiffel Tower. It is a luxury hotel that takes all the good things we associate with Paris and exaggerates them. You get to experience a world that's better than real. You're not experiencing an accurate symbol of what France is like. It's a hyper-real version, a better version. Like Disneyland's Main Street USA is a hyper-real version of small-town America. This is hyperreality. Both are versions of something that never really existed the way it's being depicted. It's a copy whose original isn't real. Here's where some of the fallout of Simulacra can be seen. There's a phenomenon called Paris syndrome, where tourists, particularly ones from Japan, can experience extreme disappointment, anxiety, and feelings of grief and even persecution when they visit the real Paris for the first time. Because Paris, France, is a real city with all the same problems as other big cities. It's crowded, it's loud, it's dirty, it infamously smells like urine. This is so far removed from the signs and symbols we think of when we think of Paris that the shock can be very painful. Simulation doesn't just soften reality, it can overwrite it. A simulation can be louder, brighter, and more appealing than anything real, to the point where it becomes more real than reality itself to those who view it. And this distortion of reality begins to break down understanding. This is the danger of hyperreality, because if you're not aware of how things are being distorted, it makes it easier for people to manipulate you, in the cases above, the Las Vegas Resort and the Disney Corporation. And there's nothing nefarious with what they're doing, no more than any other big company trying to manipulate people for money. I mean, that's capitalism, baby. But if you were to go to a place that had all the signs and symbols of a hospital, that does not mean it is a hospital. It's only giving you the experience of being in a hospital. And as much as I'm trying to say apolitical, there is a political version of this. Politicians can and do use different stages of simulation to manipulate people. If you're watching something that is showing you all the signs and symbols you associate with a reputable news network, that does not mean you're watching real news. It means you're watching something that feels like news. which is the mental riptide that sent me out to sea in the last video, so I'm going to leave it there. Feel free to leave your examples in the comments. I do not possess the ability to shut up. That is why I am a YouTuber. I want to take a moment to thank all of my Patreon patrons. I am a single mom and I do live in low-income housing, so your donations and support do mean the most. And if you want to help support this channel and keep videos coming, please head all over to patreon.com and you can support the channel for $1 a month, and that would be awesome. Okay, back to the video. I've seen meme culture used as an example, high fashion and specific types of advertising. The pumpkin example that I used in my last video isn't my own. It's a popular example that's spread in philosophy circles, and now there's a lot more attempts to explain stage 4 simulacra in that format. Things like Swedish Fish Oreos, SpongeBob SquarePants, and anime girls. It's funny because with ideas this complex, it's sort of hard to tell who's just joking around and who's serious. Author V. Mauschwitz, I can pronounce that name apparently, describes fourth stage simulacra as a state in which reality is totally irrelevant to the symbol. He describes the difference between level 3 and level 4 like this. Level 3, the simulacrum of the hyperreal. A copy that is a product of the media and has no basis in the real. So that's like the media giving us a hyperreal version of Paris and then they based a resort on it in Las Vegas. Level 4, simulacrum of simulacra. A copy that's become autonomous and no longer refers to any notion of the real at all. So a straightforward advertisement for a hamburger would describe all the ingredients and how much it cost. Many people said they enjoyed eating it. A fourth stage simulacrum of the same ad, by Mauschwitz's description, might simply show beautiful people eating hamburgers. What do hamburgers have to do with beautiful people? Well, absolutely nothing, and it doesn't matter. Because conveying a clear representation of reality is no longer the point. It's just associating the two. It's a gesture towards the two things being connected in some way. But it's not that reality was lost, it's that there is no reality. The idea that there's a connection between beauty and hamburgers is a pure fiction. Mauschwitz goes on to say that it's a common mistake to assume that people doing this have selfish motivations, though I would argue sometimes they do, when in reality, according to his view, most operators who are primarily at level 4 are going with the vibe of what seems like the thing to do, executing adaptations that have long since lost their connection to any desired physical outcome. I imagine this is because by the time you've hit stage 4, the consequences of being immersed in hyperreality have really taken hold. You're disconnected from reality, you're not thinking critically about anything, and you're passively consuming simulacra as a regular part of life. I'm going to leave Mauschwitz's Substack link in the description because his work is really interesting. I think the best example for me personally is reality TV. The first reality TV show in the form we know it today was The Real World, which first aired in 1992. If you go back and watch those first few episodes, it really is quite boring because it was genuinely cameras following around real people in an unscripted environment. It was much closer to stage 1, an honest-based reflection of reality. It didn't stay that way, though, and over years morphed into the version we know today, a bizarre fever dream of heavily edited moments laid over pre-scripted events. If you were to ask someone, is this real or fake? The honest answer is it doesn't matter. And that's what makes it pure simulacra. Whether it's real or not is totally irrelevant, and it's consumed regardless of its authenticity. On the other hand, one could argue that reality TV is stage 3 simulacra because it's still giving us a hyper-real version of something that still really exists, namely human drama. I don't know if that counts. Philosophy is hard. At its worst, reality TV seems to become stage 4, not a heightened version of real drama, but a self-contained performance that doesn't even pretend to reflect normal life. When I watch reality TV, I experience this unpleasant feeling that's hard to describe. It's a kind of psychological fatigue. It's part confusion, part vertigo. There's something incredibly gross about it. And it's not just the implication that these people are going on these shows and embarrassing themselves for money. I'm doing that right now. It's this deliberate pantomime of reality that feels like a taxidermy of the human experience. It's similar to the uncanny valley effect, but instead of being afraid, I'm just left feeling disconnected and weird. I can describe it almost as a form of anaphylaxis, like a mental allergy. Because I also feel this way about Disneyland, which makes me wonder if the connection is excessive use of simulation. And I'm not the only person who feels this way. A lot of people are skeeved out by reality TV. Right? I am very normal. Speaking of excessive use of simulation, let's talk about music for a second. Consider two different musical acts, Hatsune Miku and the band Gorillaz. Gorillaz is an animated band, but the people singing and playing the instruments are real musicians. They are writing the songs and performing them with an animated persona placed on top of it. The singer for Gorillaz is Damon Albarn, who is also the frontman for the band Blur. Hatsune Miku is a Vocaloid performer created using the Vocaloid software. She is a fully fake person built from the ground up to be a simulation of a singer. Her voice is based on the voice of a real person, Saki Fujita, but it's altered and manipulated to create the voice of Miku, which kind of sounds like air escaping a balloon. But anyway, who is more real? When you go to a Gorillaz concert, you're watching an animated version of the characters playing their instruments with a live band accompaniment, but you're also going to see Damon Albarn performing the voice of 2D. The voices of Noodle and Russell have changed a bit over the years, but most have been provided by the same people, Haruka Kuroda and Remy Kabaka Jr. An interesting difference between the two acts is that the gorilla character designs have aged with the band. Noodle began as a 13-year-old girl and is now a 33-year-old woman. On the other hand, Hatsune Miku is canonically 16 years old and will remain that way, partially for continuity reasons and partially because her age is part of the appeal to the target audience, which is actually pretty gross. Where you place these two on the spectrum of realness is up to interpretation, though I can say personally that ick I get from reality TV, I don't get that from Gorillaz, but I do get that from Hatsune Miku. Perhaps this is the difference between stage 3 and stage 4. I would argue that whether or not something is stage 3 or stage 4 doesn't really matter as much as the idea of escalating simulation itself. Like, we can go in circles bickering about the minutiae between stages, and philosophy nerds will, but the concept itself paints a much broader picture of the world we're living in. A world where we are surrounded constantly by signs and symbols that are becoming more and more abstract, and in turn, disconnecting us from reality. And that disconnection has consequences. Simulation can ease our pain, yes, but it can also numb us to the point of atrophy. In my last video, I used the example of a housebound person finding escape in an online game, but that could just as easily be a lonely teenage boy enjoying the company of an AI-generated girlfriend and calling it romance. Both are easing the pain of loneliness, but the implication for the boy's future ability to connect with real people is not great. There's also a level of entitlement and even narcissism that comes with simulation, since simulations are often catered to exactly what the person, or rather the consumer, wants. Hatsune Miku will never grow up, an anime girlfriend will never reject you, and the Paris-Las Vegas resort does not smell like urine. Eventually, you become acclimated to these fakes. You get used to it. It's easy, it's comfy, it's safe. And the real world of your favorite musicians getting old and dying, or of messy relationships with flawed people, begin to sound like a real annoyance. Okay, this next part is not Baudrillardian theory. It's my own understanding based off my life and experiences, but I think it's relevant. One of the most important lessons I've learned in life is that if you have no self-control, someone else will control you. Being able to make yourself do things you don't want to do is the difference between autonomy and servitude. That servitude can look like addiction to a company's product, but it can also be the addiction to convenience itself. There's this idea that the convenience of modern life is eroding the foundations of our culture, like marriage and religion, and they are. I mean, whether or not you think that's a good thing or not, it's definitely happening. Why work on your marriage to a flawed and complex spouse when you can dump them and pick a new person from a menu in an app like Tinder? Why adhere to the rules and structure of a religion when the airy flexibility of modern spiritualism will mold itself to whatever shape makes you feel best? Being spiritual in 2025 sure does come with a lot of tchotchke purchases off TikTok shop, let me tell you. A world of simulation is also a world of disposability. When nothing matters, nothing is maintained. And when nothing is maintained, decomposition sets in. This decay, it doesn't just affect infrastructure. It can extend to our thoughts, to discourse, to how we engage with each other and ideas. When simulation dominates, even our conversations can become disposable. That's why critical feedback is so important. In the comments of my last video, some people criticized my incomplete explanation and how I veered off topic. And That's a good thing. In a world full of simulations, it's important to think critically about what you're consuming. Part of hyperreality is the passive consumption of simulations. My video looked like an explainer video. It had all the signs and symbols associated with an explainer video. But was that what it was? Maybe the real simulacra is the videos we made along the way.